The smell of stale beer and cheap perfume clung to Sarah when she finally came home, usually well past midnight. It was a familiar scent now, one that mixed with the faint metallic tang of the factory air that sometimes drifted into our small house on the edge of town. Our town. A place the world seemed to be forgetting, one rusting bolt at a time. We lived in the American Rust Belt, where the promise of prosperity had faded like the paint on the old mill walls. My hands, calloused and scored from a decade of working the line at the plant, often ached, a dull throb that mirrored the ache in my chest. 9 years we'd been together, 4 married, 2 kids. Leo, 10, my oldest, my boy, even if the papers said I adopted him 6 years ago. I'd been in his life since he was 18 months old, changed his diapers, wiped his snot, taught him how to ride his first bike on the cracked pavement of our street. Every scraped knee, every Lego stepped on in the dark, every proud moment, that was mine. He was mine. Chloe, 6, our little whirlwind, all giggles and tangled hair. They were my world. My only world, sometimes it felt like. I worked the second shift at the plant, 50 hours a week, sometimes more if overtime was offered. It was soul-crushing work, hot and loud, but it paid the bills mostly. Sarah had started working part-time at the Rusty Mug, a local joint that catered to the after-work crowd. Said she needed to get out, make her own money. I got it. Money was always tight. We weren't starving, but savings were a fantasy, and retirement was a joke I didn't find funny. We scraped by. Always had. Her hours at the Mug crept later and later. First it was just until closing, then it was one for the road with co-workers, then it was hanging out at someone's place. 1 night a week turned into 2, sometimes 3. I'd be home, exhausted from the plant, getting the kids ready for bed, reading stories, doing homework, alone. I'd hear her car pull up hours later, the headlights sweeping across the bedroom wall. I'd lie there, listening to the distant sound of her stumbling in, the quiet clicks as she tried not to wake anyone. I tried talking to her. Hey, maybe we could do something just us? A movie? Play some cards? She'd shrug, already tired. I'm just hanging out with the girls, Ethan. The kids are asleep. What's the big deal? The big deal was I missed her. I missed us. But saying that felt weak, like I was nagging. So I'd let it go, the ache in my chest a little sharper. The tension over money was a constant hum beneath everything. Sarah had always dreamed of me making enough for her to stay home, like some of the wives she saw on TV. A nice house, no worries. That wasn't our reality. Not in this town, not with my job, not with the bills piling up. I worked my shift, came home, helped with the kids, ate dinner, then usually spent a few hours in the garage, fixing up old cars on the side for extra cash. It wasn't much, but it helped keep the wolves from the door. I was always tired. She was always restless. Then came the trip. Her cousin Brenda lived a few states over, in a bigger city. Sarah hadn't seen her in years, a week away. She said it would be good for her a break. I agreed, though the logistics of covering everything with the kids and work felt overwhelming. Mike, a buddy from the plant, offered to help with some kid pickups, a small kindness in a world that felt increasingly harsh. Sarah came back different. Not rested, but agitated, wired. She was glued to her phone, texting constantly. I saw a name pop up more than once, someone I didn't recognize. David. Who's David? I asked casually one evening. She tensed. Oh, just someone I met at a concert Brenda dragged me to. We just reconnected. A concert. Reconnected. The simple words felt hollow, like empty cans rattling down the street. My gut clenched. Something was off, way off. I'd never gone through her phone, never felt the need. Trust was the bedrock, right? But that night, after she fell asleep, the phone buzzed again. Can't stop thinking about you. Last week was incredible. My heart hammered against my ribs. Incredible? What was incredible about visiting her cousin? My hands shook as I picked up the phone. It felt heavy, wrong, but the knot in my stomach was a vice. I unlocked it, and the world tilted. Texts with David, explicit. Detail after detail of a hookup during her trip. Best night ever, he wrote. You're amazing in bed. And her replies, soaking up the praise, laughing, planning when they could reconnect again. My breath hitched. Then I saw another thread. Marcus. Her co-worker from the Mug. The schoolgirl crush she'd confessed months ago, which I'd stupidly dismissed. Now, texts planning a hotel rendezvous the same week she got back. A flimsy excuse already being crafted. Tell Ethan I stayed at Jenna's, too drunk to drive. Jenna, another co-worker she went out with. More texts with other names, other flirtations, suggestive conversations about meeting up. I sat there in the dark living room, the phone screen illuminating the wreckage of my life. It wasn't just one mistake. It was a pattern, a calculated series of deceptions. The betrayal wasn't a single stab. It was 1,000 tiny cuts, each text a twist of the knife. I felt cold, then hot with a rage so pure it burned, dragged through molten metal, spikes driven into my flesh. The mundane reality of our small, struggling house felt alien, a stage set for a performance I hadn't known I was in. Our sex life had been dead for years. After Chloe was born, it just stopped. I tried. God, I tried. Initiating, showing her I still desired her, that she was still beautiful to me. Nothing. Once or twice a month if I was lucky, and it felt like a chore for her. We used to be insatiable. It was one of the things that drew us together, that spark. It had vanished, and I hadn't understood why. Now I knew. Someone else was getting that spark. Multiple someone else's. When she woke up, I confronted her. I didn't scream. The rage was too deep, too cold for noise. My voice was flat, dead. Who is David? Who is Marcus? She blinked, groggy. Then she saw my face. And the phone in my hand. Her eyes widened, not with remorse, not with fear, with anger. You went through my phone. How could you? That was her first reaction. Not, I'm sorry. Not, I messed up. How could you? It took a few days for the dam to break, for the tears to come, for the I'm sorry, I don't know why I did it to surface. But even then, it felt performative. Like she was saying the words she thought she should say. The initial shock, the anger at being caught, that felt real. I was a mess. Mentally, physically, I was running on fumes. The plant, the garage, the kids, the crushing weight of betrayal. Depression settled in like a thick, suffocating fog. But I looked at Leo and Chloe. Their innocent faces. They deserved their family. They deserved their home. I had to try. For them. I told her I hated her for what she did, but I loved her for everything else. We slept in the same bed that night, a vast, empty space between us filled with unspoken accusations and the ghosts of strangers. Trauma bonding? Maybe. Desperation? Definitely. In the chaotic weeks that followed, nothing made sense. My mind was broken. We talked about things, trying to fix it, rebuilding. The idea of an open relationship came up. I don't even remember how. It sounded modern? A way to reset? Stupid. So incredibly stupid. We set flimsy rules, born out of desperation and damaged psyches. She went on a date with Marcus. A group thing, she said. She came home, recounted the night. It was mundane. But sitting there listening, I had a moment of chilling clarity. I worked 60 hours a week, fixed cars at night, raised 2 kids. When the hell would I have time to date, to explore? This wasn't a solution for us. It was a solution for her. A way for her to keep doing what she was doing, sanctioned. The idea died right there for me. I was drowning, flailing, trying to find air in a world that had turned upside down. One evening I was in the garage, trying to diagnose a sputtering engine. Just needed a second pair of hands to hold a light, maybe hand me a wrench. Something simple. Hey, Sarah, can you come out here for a minute? Need a hand. Nah, I'm watching TV, she called back from inside. That was it, that tiny, insignificant refusal. The care, the partnership, the basic willingness to help each other, it felt gone, replaced by indifference. Something inside me snapped, just like that. The numbness I'd been feeling, the pain, the rage, it coalesced into something cold and sharp. Vengeance, worthlessness. How easy it was for her, how little I seemed to matter. All I'd done. 2 jobs for years, scraping every penny, adopting her son, loving him as my own, building a life from nothing. And she could just watch TV. I walked out of the garage. I didn't say a word. I grabbed my keys. I ended up at a bar 15 miles away in the next town over. I downloaded a dating app. Found someone. It wasn't about connection. It wasn't about sex, not really. It was about feeling something, anything, other than the crushing weight of being betrayed and discarded. It was a desperate, ugly attempt to feel powerful, or maybe just to feel nothing at all. To inflict a fraction of the pain she'd inflicted on me. To prove I could be as careless, as detached as she was. I met the girl. We talked. Drank too much. Ended up in her beat-up car, parked down a dark, deserted road outside of town. A pathetic, hollow echo of the life I'd just discovered she was living. Then headlights. Bright, bright, blinding. Sarah's car. And in the back seat, roused from sleep, confused and scared, Leo and Chloe. She'd been tracking my phone. She brought our children at 2 in the morning to witness, what, my downfall? Her justification? It was insane. Utterly, terrifyingly insane. She got out of the car, screaming. She lunged at me, hitting, scratching. She grabbed something from her trunk, a tire iron, a wrench, and swung. It connected with my head, my shoulder. I stumbled back, dazed. I didn't fight back. Couldn't. Just stood there, absorbing the blows, the screams, the horror of the kids watching from the car. She forced me to drive the girl back to her car, my wife in the passenger seat, hissing abuse. My children silent, wide-eyed, in the back. The air was thick with trauma. The next few days were a blur of violence. Not just physical, though there was plenty of that. Punching, shoving, throwing things. She trashed the house, threw my tools, my work clothes, everything she could find, out into the yard, screaming about how I was scum, a villain, the worst husband, a terrible human being for cheating on her. Me, the one who discovered her multiple affairs, her lies, her betrayal. I tried to talk, to explain the broken place I was in, the pain, the numbness that had led me to that desperate act. It didn't matter. In her mind, my single, pathetic act of retaliation, born from her betrayal, was worse. I should have been the better man, the one who took the high road. While she was free to wallow in hypocrisy and rage, she couldn't handle a fraction of what she had dished out. It was days of walking on eggshells, trying to keep the peace, enduring the abuse, feeling my sense of self erode further with every accusation she hurled. Then came the next blow. A few days after the catching, the violence, the chaos, she found out she was pregnant. Panic, a new wave washing over the wreckage of the old. Pregnant. How? When? A doctor's visit confirmed it. The timing lined up perfectly with her trip away. David, the guy from the concert, his baby. We hadn't been intimate before or immediately after her trip. There was no denying it. She started talking about keeping it, about what we would do. My head was spinning. Raise another man's baby. A baby conceived during an affair that had destroyed my life. I looked at Leo, the son I'd chosen, the son I loved fiercely, the son whose biological father wasn't me. That was different. That was a decision made out of love, out of building a family together. This was a consequence, a painful, tangible reminder of her betrayal. I remember standing in the living room, the afternoon sun filtering through the grime on the windows, the mess of my scattered belongings still visible in the yard outside. I looked at her. Her face pale, scared, but also considering. "Sarah," I said, my voice rough, "it's your body. This is your decision. I can't tell you what to do." I repeated it over and over. "Your body, your choice. Seriously, think about what you want." But she kept pushing. "What would you do, Ethan?" If I kept it? I took a deep breath. Honesty. Maybe that was the only thing left. "Sarah, I don't know if I can handle raising another man's baby that you cheated on me with after a week, not after everything." The words hung in the air. They weren't a demand. They weren't an ultimatum. They were the raw, painful truth of my capacity or lack thereof after being broken. A few days later, she decided. Abortion. She asked me to drive her. She'd almost asked Marcus, she admitted casually, another gut punch. At the clinic, sitting in the sterile waiting room, I looked at her. "Sarah, we can go home. Right now. You don't have to do this. It's your body. This is important." She shook her head. No, she went through with it, and almost immediately the regret hit. Hard. She was a mess, crying, grieving, and then the anger returned. At me. For not being more supportive of keeping it. For saying what I said. For in her mind, forcing her to make the decision she now regretted. I had told her it was her choice, given her an honest answer when she demanded one, offered her an out even at the clinic door. None of it mattered. The blame landed squarely on me. The next few months were hell. August to December. Worse than watching my mother waste away from cancer. That was quiet, somber pain. This was loud, violent, chaotic agony. Constant fights, screaming matches that shook the thin walls of our house. She'd throw my things out again, beg me to leave, then clutch at me, telling me to fight for her. Physical violence became more common. A punch to the arm, a shove, sometimes a slap or a punch to the face. You don't report that when you're a man. You just take it. You try to keep the peace. She started using the kids, taking them for weekends without telling me where, threatening to leave and take them permanently. Christmas Eve. She actually took them. Drove off. I stood there, Watching the taillights disappear, the snow starting to fall, feeling a cold dread unlike anything I'd ever known. She brought them back hours later, after I'd called Mike, called a lawyer, spiraled into pure panic. Just testing the waters, I guess, showing me what she could take. We were living in a war zone, both of us wounded, bleeding all over the place, but she was the one still throwing grenades. And then the ultimatum. It came out of nowhere, yet felt like the inevitable conclusion to the madness. We were talking, attempting a calm conversation for once. It devolved, as it always did, into rehashing the past, the blame. Her regret over the abortion surfaced, raw and bitter. "I should have kept him," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "He was a part of me." My chest tightened. I didn't know what to say. Then her eyes hardened. "I'm not doing this anymore, Ethan. This, trying to fix things. It's too hard." My heart sank. Was this it? The end? "Unless," she said, her voice gaining strength, a strange mix of desperation and demand, "unless you give me a baby." I stared at her. "What?" "A baby," she repeated, firmer now. "I want another baby, with you, right now. If you give me a baby, we can fix this. We can start over. That's the only way I'm willing to work on us. You need to give me a baby, Ethan, or I'm leaving. For good, and I'm taking the kids." The words hung in the air, heavier than any weight I lifted at the plant. Give her a baby. A replacement for the one she aborted, the one conceived with another man during her affair. Give her a baby, conceived in a marriage shattered by betrayal, abuse, and regret. As a condition. To save a family that was already bleeding out. It was insane. We were lower middle class, barely making ends meet with 2 kids. Another mouth to feed, another human being to provide for, to love, to protect in this chaos. Financially, it was suicide. Emotionally, the thought of being intimate with her, trying to conceive a child with the woman who had put me through this hell, who had hit me, blamed me, used our children as pawns. It felt repugnant. A violation. But Leo and Chloe, their faces flashed in my mind. Happy before all this. Now, quiet, watchful. They needed their dad. I was their dad. The thought of a 50-50 split, of not seeing them every day, of missing half their lives. Especially Leo, my adopted son. The papers meant I was legally his father, responsible for him forever. But it was the years, the love, the shared life that made him my son. The thought of losing that, of him being caught between us, of Sarah potentially poisoning him against me, it was unbearable. I stood there in the middle of the living room, the ghosts of thrown objects and screaming matches swirling around me. Give in, save the family unit, keep the kids close, but at what cost to myself? To a potential new life brought into this toxic environment? Work even harder, maybe 80, 90 hours a week, just to stay afloat with 3 kids, knowing it was all for a woman who had destroyed me and was now making this impossible demand. Feel like a weak man, giving in just to keep his kids, or walk away. Face the financial ruin, the grueling custody battle, the loneliness of being a single dad with no family nearby. Just Mike, who had his own struggles. Find peace. Maybe. Eventually. But lose precious time with my children, force them to navigate 2 separate, likely still contentious households. 6 months had passed since the discovery. The screaming had lessened, replaced by a tense, fragile quiet. We coexisted. For the kids. But the ultimatum had changed everything. The fork in the road wasn't miles away. It was right here, under our worn-out rug. My gut screamed at me. Get out. Save yourself. Find peace. You deserve it. Your kids deserve a dad who isn't broken, isn't living in a constant state of anxiety and pain, but the thought of not being there. Of them waking up in a different house half the time. Of Leo, my son, the one I chose, being potentially pulled away. I don't know Reddit. I'm just a guy from a town that's seen better days, with hands that are rough and a heart that's broken. I wanted advice, clarity, someone to tell me I wasn't crazy for thinking this ultimatum was the most messed up thing I'd ever heard. Someone to tell me what they would do. I looked around the room, the life we'd built, or the wreckage of it. The decision felt too big for one man, too heavy. Give her a baby, or walk away. The silence stretched, filled only by the distant sound of a train whistle, a mournful cry in the night. The silence after Sarah's ultimatum was thick, suffocating. It pressed in on me from all sides, amplifying the frantic hammering of my heart. Give her a baby. The words echoed in my head, a grotesque perversion of a desire that should be born from love and hope, not regret and manipulation. I looked at her, searching for something in her eyes. Remorse, understanding, anything other than the hard, demanding glint I saw there. Nothing, just the raw need twisted into a condition. "Sarah," I finally managed, my voice hoarse. You can't be serious." "I am," she said, her voice flat, devoid of the earlier tears. I lost him. And it's empty now, Ethan. I need another baby, a new start, and it has to be with you, because you're my husband, and if you won't give me that, then there's nothing left here for me." She gestured around the room, her hands sweeping dismissively over the worn furniture, the faded walls. This isn't enough anymore. Not enough. Was that what this was about? The town, the house, the constant struggle? Was I not enough? Had I ever been? The thought twisted the knife in my gut. I had bled for this family, worked myself to the bone, loved her son as my own, and now, after she'd shattered everything, I was the one being given conditions. "And the kids?" I asked, my voice trembling despite myself. "You'll just take them?" A flicker in her eyes. Not sadness, but calculation. 50-50, she said, as if reciting a legal term she'd looked up. "Worst case, but I'll fight for full. You know I will." I knew she would. She had already shown she was willing to use them, to drag them into the middle of our ugliness. The image of Leo and Chloe in the back seat of the car that night, their small faces pale with fear, was burned into my memory. Could I put them through a custody battle? Could I risk losing them, even for half the time? "Sarah, we can barely afford the two we have," I pleaded, trying to appeal to some shred of practicality, of shared reality. "My job, your job, another baby. How would we even?" "We'd figure it out," she snapped, cutting me off. "People do it all the time. You could get more overtime, find another side job, stop wasting time in the garage fixing old junk." My side hustle, my small escape, the one thing I built myself, the one thing that sometimes felt like mine. She wanted me to give that up too, to become nothing but a workhorse, a sperm donor on demand, just to fulfill her sudden, desperate need. "It's not fair, Sarah," I said, the words barely a whisper. "After everything." "Fair?" she scoffed, standing up, pacing now. "Fair? Is it fair that I'm stuck here? Is it fair that I lost my baby?" Her voice rose, the anger returning. "You didn't want him. You said you couldn't handle him. You made me feel like I had to do it." The familiar flip of the script. Blame. Always blame. My head swam. I wanted to scream, to rage, to point out the twisted, impossible logic of her words. She cheated. She got pregnant. She chose. And somehow, it was my fault she regretted it, and my responsibility to fix it by giving her a replacement. "That's not what happened," I said, trying to stay calm, trying to hold on to the sliver of sanity left in the room. "I said it was your choice. I told you how I felt, honestly." "And you made me feel like I had no choice," she yelled, her face contorted with emotion. "You took that away from me, and now I need to have another one, to make it right. To make this family whole again. Make it whole again. With a baby born into this wreckage, a baby meant to fill a void left by infidelity and abortion." It was a foundation built on quicksand. I looked at her, this woman I had loved for almost a third of my life, the mother of my children, the one I had stood by, supported, even adopted her son for. She was a stranger, a volatile, unpredictable force of nature that threatened to consume everything in its path. "And if I say no," I asked, the words heavy, tasting like ash, her eyes narrowed, cold. "Then I leave, and we figure out the kids, through the courts if we have to. I'm serious, Ethan. I can't stay here like this, not unless we're moving forward, and moving forward, for me, means a baby." She walked away then, leaving me alone in the silence once more. The air still hummed with her demand, her threat. My heart ached, a deep physical pain. My mind raced, presenting impossible scenarios, each one ending in pain and loss. Give in. Try to conceive. Bring a child into a home that was a battleground. Work myself into an early grave to pay for it all. Endure intimacy that felt like a violation. Live with the knowledge that I was a means to an end, a solution to her regret, not a loved partner. But keep Leo and Chloe here under my roof every night. See their faces every morning. Tuck them in every night. Avoid the devastating fight for custody. Walk away. Face the divorce, the legal fees I couldn't afford, the fight for my children. The very real possibility of a 50-50 split, or worse, given her volatility and potential to lie. Start over, alone, in a town where opportunities were scarce and support was scarcer. Find peace, eventually maybe, but miss half of my children's lives. See the pain in their eyes as their family was officially torn apart. I walked over to the window, looked out at the darkened street, the street where I'd taught Leo to ride his bike. The houses looked tired, like everything else in this town. The factory whistle blew in the distance, a long, mournful sound. It felt like it was blowing for me. I thought about Mike, my friend. He'd been through his own rough patch, a messy divorce. He'd just listened, mostly, offered a beer. There wasn't much anyone could do. This was my mess. I thought about Leo's adoption, the day in court, the judge asking if I understood the responsibility, my unwavering yes, Your Honor, the feeling of permanence, of absolute commitment. Sarah had stood beside me, smiling. It felt like we were building something unbreakable. Now she was threatening to break the most precious part of it. The poison of her betrayal, of the abuse of this final twisted demand, it had seeped into every corner of my life. I felt hollowed out, a shell. The man who had worked 2 jobs, adopted a son, believed in forever. He felt long gone. Could I live with myself if I gave in? If I let her dictate the terms of our survival, using a child as leverage? What kind of example would that set for Leo and Chloe? That it's okay to treat someone like dirt, to lie, cheat, hit, and then demand they give you what you want to fix the mess you made? But could I live with myself if I walked away and lost time with my kids? If Leo grew up seeing his parents living separate lives, knowing his mom had threatened to take him away? My head ached. My body felt heavy with exhaustion. This wasn't living. This was just enduring. Enduring the constant anxiety, the fear of the next fight, the next threat, the crushing weight of an impossible decision. I wasn't the strong, silent type I sometimes wished I was. I was just tired and scared. Scared for my kids, scared for myself. I walked into Leo's room. He was asleep, tangled in his blankets, his face soft and innocent. I sat on the edge of his bed, the springs creaking softly. I looked at him, my boy, my son. His future was tied to my decision. Chloe was in the next room, sleeping just as soundly, her little hand tucked under her chin. Pure, innocent life. How could I bring another life into this? How could I deny them the stability, the peace they deserved? They needed a stable home, even if it was split. They needed a dad who wasn't constantly fighting, constantly on edge. My peace. The thought felt selfish, but was it? Was it truly selfish to want to breathe again? To not feel the constant threat of emotional and physical violence? To not be trapped in a cycle of blame and manipulation? I knew the answer, deep down. The gut feeling I mentioned in my original post. The one that told me what I should do. Choose myself. Choose peace. Even if it meant the hardest fight of my life, the financial struggle, the heartbreak of shared custody. But the gap between knowing and doing felt like a chasm I couldn't cross. The fear was immense. The love for my children, the fierce protective instinct to keep them close, was a powerful counterweight to the need for self-preservation. This wasn't a movie. There was no dramatic swelling music, no clear hero or villain, not really. Just messy, painful, human reality. A reality born in a struggling town, fueled by infidelity, regret, and a demand so bizarre it felt unreal. I stayed there for a long time, sitting by Leo's bed, listening to the quiet sounds of the house that was both my sanctuary and my prison. The decision hadn't been made. Not yet.